to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware.
Hello, I am Lisa Garr, and welcome to the Aware Show. It is such an honor to be here with you during these incredible times of change, of transformation. And how are you? How are you handling this right now? This has been a time of extreme introspection. We've had the opportunity to look inside ourselves deeply, find out what we're made of. And this has really put a lot of humanity to a test. And this is the most incredible opportunity to be able to dive into self-learning and self-care. And that's a lot of what we're talking about today. We're talking about a great title of a book. It's called Overwhelmed and Over It. Are you over being overwhelmed? My guest, Christine Arylo, is and was so much that she wrote a book about it. She's an incredible transformational leadership advisor. She's a 3-time best-selling author. And she also hosts her own podcast called Feminine Power Time Podcast. And Christine, this new book, even though you started it a few years ago, is so relevant to today's times. You must have known something was breaking down, did you?
Well, I think the universe was like, you need to write this book and you need to write it now. So even though I started writing the book 3 years ago, but actually I've been living it for 10 years. It's been about 10 years of like understanding like what is going on in our world right now, like even 10 years ago.
Yes.
And that set me on this deep research in myself and what was going on in the world that then 3 years ago led to it's time to write the book. And then of course I had no idea. I didn't have the idea. The universe probably had the idea that this would be the right timing for this book to come in.
The subtitle I find particularly interesting. It's Embrace Your Power to Stay Centered and Sustained in a Chaotic World. Now, did you write that in 2020?
You know, it's interesting. The original subtitle of the book is Overwhelmed and Over It. And then it's Not Your Fault and How to Find the Power to Change It. That was the original subtitle, and it's still completely throughout the entire book, which I would love to let anyone know here. If you're feeling overwhelmed and overstretched and overextended and just can't seem to manage it all, it actually isn't our fault. And there's some deeper root reasons why. And we changed the subtitle into Embrace Your Power, which is about, I think when we feel so overwhelmed, it could be like, I don't even know where to start. Like, how do I even create a life that's sustainable? And so I really feel like self-awareness is the first step. And then once you have awareness, you can actually change what you can see. You can't change what you can't see.
Well, that's been very interesting because a lot of us are in this place where our businesses disappeared overnight, that our income disappeared overnight. I have another company in the television entertainment industry, and that industry really became just shut down amidst the incredible creativity within that industry. It shut down and came to a screeching halt, as did many, many industries. And then there's those that are up and down, open and close, in and out, trying to survive. I mean, this is really unforeseen. And as I said in the intro, it tests the character of who we are more than, wow, overnight. And I think a way of also that we're dealing with right now is being so overwhelmed all the time. It's fatiguing, and you can see that in the protests, and you can see that in the polarization around the opens and closes and so forth. So, what is your version of overwhelm?
Well, it's not just overwhelm, like, oh my God, there's too much going on. It's overwhelm, it's burnout, it's self-sacrifice, it's working in a way in which it's just not sustainable for people or planet. I mean, that's what, when I look at 2020 and what's happening, it's been ratcheting up for years. I mean, that's why I said I've been researching this for 10 years, writing it for 3. And if you kind of just think back at, you know, that metaphor about the frog in the pot? You ever heard that? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why the frog is in the pot. I can't tell you all of that.
Yeah, I know. I don't like that metaphor, but I get it.
But it's, so you have the frogs in the pot and he's basically on the stove and there's like, 1 degree, the water keeps getting turned up. So the frog has no idea that it's about to be boiled until it's basically boiled. And then it's,
And then it hops out. So
no, it dies. Stop. It dies in the pot, because it doesn't.
My version is that it hops out. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. That's where we're at right now. Like we are at that boiling point. And so we're at a choice point, I think, as humans of are we gonna boil as a planet and as a people, or are we going to be like, what the heck is actually going on? And this is and then hop out. And I'm with you. I'm like, let's hop out. Let's hop out of the pot, you all. And if you think of the pot as the systems that we work and live in that form our society, this starts to make a lot of sense. So when I started I'm all about getting to the root versus trying to just keep band-aiding the solution, right? So we've been talking about self-care and stress management and time forever.
Right.
And it's gotten us to a point of awareness, but the point where it's kind of stopped us is actually how to make it different. And so I started getting into like what's really underneath this lack of sustainability, that no matter how much we work, how much money we make, how much whatever, it's like never enough. And one of the things that I realized it was that the systems that create our culture, so think healthcare, government, business, financial, stock market, all of it is human made. It's completely designed by humans. And if you think about the consciousness of when most of those systems were created, you can go back even farther, but let's go back to the Industrial Revolution. Mm-hmm. It was a time of grow big, grow fast, push, compete, dominate, accumulate. And I don't know if we could have gotten to where we are today with the infrastructure and all the things without that. But what I do know is that we can't keep continuing. And I think most of us know that. But we've been so busy in our lives just trying to keep our head above the water or just manage all the things that we have. We haven't had the space to even look around and be like, is what we're doing actually the way we want to function as humans?
It's so true. I mean, over the last, I would say, 40 years, it has been like that, 50 years for women specifically, because we've been, fighting for the equal rights, fighting for having the ability to be, work and also maintain our families. But that part didn't change because the nature of who we are as women is we are nurturers. So we can't just let go of the house and let go of the family because it's not in our nature as women. Some can, I'm speaking generally. But there's always that need to nurture something. And that gets, I guess, what was the word you said? Self-sacrificed, mm-hmm. when we realize that we're all of a sudden in this working world where we're having to learn all the new tech, the new ways of working, the new this, the new that, keep up with everything and still keep the nurturing going. And the main sacrifice that's happening is ourselves. Yeah, that has been happening for a long time. We really didn't have models of what that looked like. Unless you had a working mom when she was, 50 years ago or whatnot, we really haven't had a lot of great models of it.
No, we've had a lot of models in my research for myself. I don't know how it was for you, Lisa, and everyone growing up. For me, I had both the models of the self-sacrificer and I also had the model of the superwoman. And I had both, right? So both in my mother, who did both. She was a working mom and she was a Girl Scout troop leader. I mean, like the woman never actually sat down. But I also had it in my mentors and watching the women around me as I climbed the ladder in corporate America. And then I left and I became an entrepreneur. And there was just still, it was the same pressure. And it was about 2006 when I left my corporate job to write my first book. And I had what I call my first superwoman sob moment. I don't know, Lisa, if you've ever had one of these, but it's where you find yourself like just in a complete breakdown in the tears because the pressure is so much, like a keg that's just been.
They don't stop. Yes.
And that's a sign. So that's a sign that something's out of alignment. So I remember sitting in my office floor and I'm looking at my vision board, right, of all my big dreams, and I have all my MBA. So it was very very linear, like all my plans and all my strategies. And I after the tears subside, the little voice comes in, right? That inner wisdom comes in, and it's like that calm after the storm. And the voice says to me, Christine, you're never going to be able to reach your mission or your goals or make the difference you want in this world without exhausting yourself or making yourself sick, because you don't have the feminine. You need the feminine. And I was like, that is true. And I don't even know what you're talking about. But I have no idea what that is. And that set me off. I'm like what is the feminine? Like, what does that actually mean? And what I learned is I had just been so entrained to work in this I would say distorted masculine culture, not even masculine power, distorted power of that invincible superwoman Atlas, I can do it all, or the distorted feminine, which was I'll sacrifice everything for my mission, for my family, for whatever, and I'll make it all work. And that's not working. And I think that's the part, as women specifically, for us this is the time to take a stand and be like, you know what? The way that we've been working for the last 60 years since women fully entered the workforce, it's not working.
Which is interesting, right? Because now we've had this massive pause and we're not going back to offices as we know them. We're not going back to that corporate structure. We're home. And it got a little bit more difficult for those with young ones because now they brought their work home. There's no separation. They're juggling more than they've ever juggled before. But it also we can look at and say, was that really ever working for me? And do I really want to go back to that structure? How do we recreate and reimagine and redesign ways that we can have a fair work structure, get as much done, stay home, and handle children? How is that going to possibly work out?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We're at this crossroads point, right? So what women have been doing for a long time is we've just been assimilating into the systems because we didn't really have a choice. And one of the things I did during my research, I'm like, I got to go back and talk to the women that were actually on the forefront of the last rise of feminism, of when it's equal rights for all, and women did enter the workforce. So I actually had a chance to talk to Gloria Steinem and some other people personally, and I'm kind of like, okay, WTF? What is going on?
Yeah.
And really the two main parts of that is that, number one, there wasn't a consciousness at that time that we could say, you know what, we need to redesign the systems. If women are going to be fully in the workforce, if we're going to have two people working full time, this has to change. The education system has to change. All things have to change. And I remember Gloria said to me, she said, well, basically what the system said is, too bad, ladies, figure it out. You just got to take more on.
Totally.
And so we did, right? I mean, y'all remember Dynasty with the shoulder pads and the butchy haircuts, bad, Aquanet, the whole thing. And we just went right into the crazy 80s, which was so about accumulation and consumerism. And I feel like we've been putting our head above the water, and 2020 was like a deluge. And so especially for working parents, there's no more. We literally cannot do anymore or give anymore. It's a breaking point. And either we're going to break through or we're going to break down, or we're going to break down and break
I have been in that inquiry for the past several months, is that inquiry of, do you break down or break through? And I've really been studying that question because the breakdown is a nowhere conversation. It stays in the same place. It's repetitive. The breakthrough has forward momentum. You don't know what it looks like yet, but it's the only thing that doesn't recycle the freaking breakdown. And it's, I don't know exactly what the breakthrough looks like, but it hasn't. And we have had this time of introspection, true, and we've all had a great time to be able to kind of pause and, kind of reconnect with some people or family or whatnot. But now we really got to recreate ourselves. And I've heard if you're at this time, if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And that just puts a ton of pressure on us.
It does, and we have to be careful, because this is the thing we do as humans, and especially as Americans. I don't know how people, but I know as Americans we do this. We just want to go forward and move, and we actually have to, though, we have to heal first. And we have to accept and acknowledge what has actually been, because what we've been doing, especially as Americans, we just keep paving over everything, and then we just march forward. And then we don't actually go into the deeper place. Can I just have a pill? Can I just have a process? Can I just have something? Just tell me what to do, and then I'll do it. But what I found in my research is there's lots of ways we can, point to the system in the way that we just had to kind of suck it up. But we've internalized a lot of that. And so where the embrace your power part comes from is it comes from self-awareness. I mean, you hit it when you first started the show. And I really believe that all social and systemic transformation has to be rooted in lasting personal transformation, or we just keep skipping on the surface. And so what I found in myself and in so many of the women, and this is true for men too, there are these deep reasons within ourselves that are in our hearts, that are in our fear, that are imprinted in our cellular structure, they're imprints. And we don't want to look at them, that cause us to drive, overgive, overcaretake, overcompensate. I found 13 different ways women overgive to their work, to their relationships. And then that's how we create our value and our whole self-worth. Like this stuff gets really deep into that deeper place. And the pause is like, you actually, well, you don't have to go in there deep. But if you don't go in there deep, you're just going to keep recapitulating the same thing with a different nameplate. And that is what I'm inviting people to do. And you don't have to sit on a therapy couch for 20 years. There's easy ways to get in there if you're willing to be honest with yourself and look at how you have a part in creating it, because that's where the power comes to change it.
So Overwhelmed and Over It, the book isn't really just about being over it. It really has solutions for things that have not yet been defined for women. And that is very helpful, because I can get into that place too of being very like, okay, I am a very driven person. My family knows that. I don't tend to stop at all. And even at the beginning of the pandemic, I stopped, but it was as if I was still working, because my mind was constantly in a now what? How is this going to work out? What do we do now mode? And many people are experiencing that they're working harder than they ever have for little or no money. Because this is what a pivot requires, is a lot of a lot of sweat equity right now. And so what does that look like? What does it look like to still pay attention to yourself, but be in the biggest pivot of your life?
So when I have everyone kind of think about a triangle. This is I call it my sacred, it's a triangle of sacred transformation. And sacred transformation means, the word sacred, one of my favorite words in the world. It means wholeness, and it means holy, which means wholeness. And it means to go, so if you put it in front of transformation, sacred transformation is moving towards wholeness in a way that has respect and awe without violence for the self or others. And you have to be dedicated to it. That's the other thing that the word sacred means. You have to be dedicated and committed. So here's the thing. We're in the goo, right? So you got, if we're a butterfly, we are in the collective goo, and no one gets out. It doesn't matter. Lisa doesn't get out of it. I don't get out of it. It doesn't matter if you've been doing your work for 35 years and you can levitate. I don't care. No one gets out of this. Like, we all got to go in there and like look at those places in which we've assimilated this crazy banana culture that Carissa Pinkola Estes so lovely named the overculture. Like, we don't even know it's there. So we have to, one part of it, we have to look in there and heal those parts of ourselves that are operating from lack and not enoughness and fear. And we all have them. Every human has them. And you don't build a condo up over there and sit in it for 25 years and be, oh, woe is me. You look it, you find it, you go in, you get it, you transmute it. And then we also have to preserve and stabilize ourselves right now. So it's a little bit like being on one of those boards, that has like the balance boards. So so we have to like heal the parts that are in there, which is a lot of what Overwhelmed and Over It is about, and stabilize, which is also what the book is really about, while we also, top of the triangle, create and lead the way to the new. All three of those at the same time.
Good thing we're multitaskers. Let me ask you, what is an overculture?
So Clarissa Pinkola Estes, in her work, Women Who Run with Wolves, she defines overculture as the crazy, mad society that we've assimilated into in order to survive. But we don't know that we're in the overculture, because it's like being a fish in a fishbowl, but you don't realize that you're in a fishbowl. You think you're free, but you're really not free. You're in a fishbowl and you wait for the flakes to come down, and you're all running around trying to get your castle and protect your territory. And we just don't realize. And I can think of before the age of 30 and the life that I lived, and it was very like, I kind of was on the track to success. I didn't know what I didn't know. And then I didn't know what I didn't know when I was 40, and I woke up and I saw more. So there's this way that what I'm trying to do with Overwhelmed and Over It is help people see how they have these parts inside of themselves that cause us to strive and drive and work hard to succeed. Is like, that's one of the imprints that I found that we operate on. Work hard to succeed. Like, we all say those kinds of things. Like, you got to work hard, sweat equity, all these things. But that's exhausting. And maybe that's what had to happen up until this point. But there's a wiser way to work. but we actually have to slow down to find it. And that's the scary part for most of us.
Right now, especially. I mean, for decades, I've interviewed people about ease and flow and grace. And right now, it's like, holy mother of God. There is no time right now for that. But what you're saying is there actually is. And that's the most important time to take that. I do have a question, though. What about, you're a highly creative woman and you're very energetic and you have a lot of great ideas. What if you like that pace? I mean, what if you like the pace of being creative and ideas flowing? And it doesn't happen all the time, but what if you're in this making an egg phase and you're really, when you're
because people think slowing down means like, oh, I have to go sit under a Bodhi tree and meditate for weeks. I don't meditate for weeks. You're never going to catch me at a Vipassana retreat, which is wonderful, but I'm not into the whole silent thing. But it's about,
I get you. I would probably take me 3 days. By the end of the retreat, I would finally calm down.
Well, right. And that's the downshifting part. So so it's not about balance and just living in equilibrium. One of the things that is core to the way I think I'm really teaching people how to succeed differently that actually is sustainable. And one of the best metaphors I have for this is an orchestra. So it's all about harmony. It's really about harmony. And if an orchestra, one of the things that it's kind of a core teaching, and I live this way, is you need to have 3 different states of energy output in your day, in your week, in your month, in your year, to create a rhythm to your life and a flow that's sustainable. And so think of it like an orchestra. There's these 3 levels. There's staccato or intensity, what I call intensity. And so that's where you're having a high level of output, a high level of creativity. And, it's intense. I actually don't use the word busy. I kicked that out of my language library a long time ago. And that's one way to start to shift overwhelm. Stop saying you're busy. Say you're intense. You're in a period of intensity. That actually opens up people to be like, how can I help? What do you need?
Right. Collaborate.
Busy.
Yes.
Yeah, which kind of pushes people away. But you can't live in intensity, because if you live in intensity, you burn out. Maybe not physical burnout, but there's compassion burnout and passion burnout. There's 9 different kinds of burnout. And then there's the flow state. Like that's like melody, like da da bum bum ba da 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 da. Like it's sustainable. You can do it for a long period of time. But intensity, like imagine staccato for like 4 hours. Like people's fingers would be bloody, the tuba player would fall over. And then there's replenishment. And that's like lyrical, and so if you think about your day should have those 3 flows in it: replenishment, flow state, intensity. Your week should have those. Your month should have those. And your year should have those. And it's one of the best things I did as an entrepreneur, because I create a lot. And so putting these spaces in, and putting these breathers in, and having these different structures and practices that help you reset daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly is the practical application to like, how do you get into the flow? Sounds really nice, but like, how do you do it? That's how we do it.
So give me a day. Give me like an idea of your day so I can see how you incorporate those 3 states into your day.
Well, the most important part of a day, so if you break it down in the day, and think like the sun comes up, the sun goes down, right? So we're actually modeling nature. That's the whole thing. We don't want to model the man-made systems, because they're banana pants. We model how things grow. Naturally, our lives will come more into harmony. So what I live and what I teach is I call it the Bookend Practice. And so it's like how you rise and shine in the morning, and then you come up, and then you downshift into the evening. So how that looks practically, for example, is you don't wake up and hit the ground running like that. You do not do that. You don't reach for the phone. Right. Don't let the outside world in, because the first hour of your day, the yogic science teaches us, and I certainly believe this and experience it, what you bring into your energy field, your mind, your emotional field in the first hour, and what you goes kind of sets your tone for your day. And it's hard, right? We all have these little phones that are like lottery machines, and we like gotta go for it. And now all of a sudden, all of that energy is now in you, and you're focused on the outside world versus the inside world. And so that first hour, making sure that you're connecting on 4 points: connecting physically to your body and the earth, connect, to the universe, whatever that is for you. That's something that's like, oh my God, something bigger than me. I call it the force, has this because it's too big for me. And then to yourself and like what you need for the day. And then also connecting to others that actually love you, and like you feel loved and connected. So for me, I call it love store with my border collie in the morning. And there's lots of hugging that happens, and so it's like I make sure that I touch those 4 points. And I also protect my energy field before I interact with the outside world. And you don't have to sit on a cushion for an hour to do that. I don't meditate for an hour.
Right. No, I do that right when between the twilight and the waking state is I really just go, I kind of review my dreams to see what they were about and if there's anything I needed to learn. And then I go into my intentions for the day. And I'm in such a deep state at that point that I can usually be more effective with the intentions because I don't get distracted by the monkey mind yet.
Yeah,
so it does help.
Which is one of, I think it's one of the most powerful practices is what you put into your mind. And that first waking moment when you wake up is really, really important. And I find that a lot of people can have the energetic or the spiritual part, but they don't do the physical part. And it's not just working out. It's like actually like I literally walk out my door every morning and I make sure that my bare feet touch the ground before I ground into the computer. And it's a technique. They actually have a name for it now. It's called earthing. But I'm like, hello, Mother Earth. Hello, tree. Hello, that there's this world that is actually really real. And I think that's part of what we're suffering from in the overwhelm and the overdoing. We're really disconnected from the natural world, even if it's all around us.
It's true, especially when we're living on Zoom all day and we're not able to really get off of it and sit, chained to your desk for so long. Sometimes you don't even go outside for a day. So it's nice to be able to have that reminder of nature, even if it's freezing cold out or whatever it is, you can still get in touch with nature. I'm a huge,
yeah. Well, and it's so, I don't know if you find this, Lisa, or not, because you talk to lots of different people, but one of the things I find is like, there are these simple things, right? And it seems like so simple, like, oh, okay, that's nice. I'm going to go put my feet on the ground, or like I do a practice every morning or I check in on my life force to see where my life force is at. And I ask myself a very specific question: what do I need to receive today? Because one of the things that gets us into overwhelm is we're like banks who always give, and we don't actually receive enough. And then that's how we end up in deficit emotionally, physically, mentally. And then whatever I need to receive, like yesterday or today, I was like a change of pace. So yesterday, Thursdays are my day I do all my personal mentoring. It was a very intense day. Like I literally, the kind of day where you have like 15 minutes in between, things. And it was like that. And I finished a workshop at 7:00. And then I was just like, I started my downshift. And, and I have a process I do to downshift. I put a special robe on. I change the music. I turn all the overhead lights off. And I woke up this morning and I was like, okay, where's my life force at? And then what do I need to receive? And the answer was a change of pace. So it's like you get these words, right? Your inner wisdom will speak to you. And I was like, yeah, I need to downshift out of intensity, because what happens is we get used to intensity, and then intensity becomes the new flow state. And so it's like a piano board, like you're in middle C and you move up an octave for a day or a couple of weeks. And then if you don't downshift, you go up another octave, and you keep doing that until your whole life is intensity. And then just depending on how your ego structure works, some people like to do, I call it the indulgent swing dance, that they're addicted to intensity. So they're like work intense and they play intense. Like
constantly, yes.
No, it does.
Yes.
I have a little bit of that in me. So
I know. I mean, it's I call it creativity. But can I ask you about having our voices be heard? And so this is a big thing for women of having our voices be heard. And we were raised from mothers that were told you're better seen than heard, and then that carried over into our generation, and it has the opportunity to stop with us, but it's still bleeding over a little bit into our children's generation. Although they have Instagram now and they have an amazing way to connect with each other, they don't have that here's my voice in society feeling as much. It's coming along. But we have to heal it in ourselves as parents first, right? Yeah. To have our voices be heard. How do you suggest feeling that or healing that so it doesn't carry over to the next generation?
Well, it's interesting about our voice, and because our voice is part of how we express our power. And in Over and Over It, the last section is about liberating your power and what power really is. And I think as women and men as a society, we have a misunderstanding of what power is, because when we think about power, when we think about people using their voice, there's a lot of distortion that we see out there. And a lot of the women that I work with and the leadership work I do, they think they have to model that. They think they have to model what confidence looks like. They think they have to model what strength looks like. So even when I'm working with young women in their, that are in high school going into college, they're trying to model what they see out there versus actually getting in tune and in touch with their heart, with their presence, with who they are as a person and how their voice wants to emerge. So really it's about self-love and self-worth, and about teaching our girls, which means we have to do it too, to get into our bodies. I mean, we are not completely in our bodies. We are not in our physical bodies. And so what comes out, the voice is like, it comes out from here, and it's shrill and it feels disempowered, because from a feminine perspective, in order to really speak, write, whatever, from your power, you have to be embodied and you have to be in your heart. And that's where that fierce feminine comes out. And she doesn't have to rant. The feminine doesn't rant, rage, manipulate, evangelize. She speaks her truth in this really rooted, grounded way. And for a lot of women, it's a soft strength. It's a quiet strength, but it's fierce. And I think of the person I think that embodied what I call fierce grace, which to me is what a woman's power is, our voice when we're really speaking, is Maya Angelou. Like, she's always the first one who comes to me, because she would be in a room and she would speak, or you read her work and you actually slow down a little and you pay attention, and it's like, boom, it's there. And so I think that's the part of for us as women, understanding our power, where it comes from, and then teaching and modeling for our young girls. And they probably have a lot to teach us too.
They do a lot about freedom of expression and so forth. But yes, it does help when we're modeling that strength in our bodies, in our self-confidence, that we're still learning. And then we have to model it at the same time. When you mentioned Maya Angelou, I was thinking about other women who are strong leaders and empowered speakers, but a lot of them I don't notice have figured out the family thing and that balance there. A lot of strong female leaders that I am thinking of don't have children. So what is I'm just, off the top of my head, like you had mentioned, the attorney earlier, I'm sorry, she's skipping my mind, that you had mentioned, I don't know, maybe I'm just overgeneralizing here, but how do you also have that level of balance where you want to give all that creativity to your work and you want to start to reinvent or recreate and constantly doing that in your work, but there's also a child in the house who needs your guidance. It's school guidance or it's relationship guidance or whatever it is. You're constantly in that place of the creative wheels don't stop spinning. How do you give it back to yourself?
Well, I think one of the things that this generation of women is our job is to break out of this work-life balance paradigm craziness that it's ridiculous. It's like we will never solve it in work-life balance, because you basically have work and life. It's a duality, and work pulls at life and life pulls at work. But if you think about it, parenting and mothering, and I talk about this in Overwhelmed and Over It when I start to redefine what work actually is. We have to redefine our career and what I call sacred work. So sacred work is what you are saying yes to causing, creating, and doing in this world. It's a way of looking at purpose, but it's kind of bigger than that. It's like what you're actually doing. It's not just this lofty thing up there. It's like, I'm choosing this as my sacred work. And then your career, the meaning of the word career is path. So your career is the path. And so what's happened in our culture, our culture does not value motherhood. And this is part of what I think is happening with the mothers having and parents having to actually burden, like take all of this on. I mean, think of what teachers get paid. Think of what the people who nurture, going back to where we started, Lisa, we do not value nurturing in the society. And so I think if the women woke up and like, had the ability to somehow, I don't know how we do it, but I know that we have to value and say, you know what, parenting is work. I actually think it's one of the hardest jobs on the planet. It is. And I can also say, I don't have children. I chose not to have them. So it's interesting how passionate I am about this because it is a job. And so many of the women I talked to as I was doing the research for Overwhelmed and Over It, they said, Christine, I can handle coming to work and dealing with that. That's easy. But I go home and I have another job. And like that's when it really started to strike me of like we don't hold parenting as a job. It's part of our sacred work. It's this thing we have to kind of, it's over here with life, but it actually is over here with our sacred work. And then
because it pulls at you emotionally. It's an emotional job. Parenting is.
It's emotional. Well, there's mothering and parenting, which I think are actually similar but different. Because parenting is like, you got to take your kids to school. You got to make sure that they're doing good. You have to there's like, it's not always the most glorious thing, as a parent. And then mothering is the nurturing and, the things that you do to nurture and grow these beautiful beings. And it takes a lot of your creative energy. And I remember when I was choosing whether or not to have children, talking to a good friend of mine who you might know, Christine Carlson, who wrote the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series. Yes. And Chris said to me, she goes, you will not, if you choose to have children, and Gloria said this too. So here's one woman who had children and one woman who didn't. You're not going to delay your destiny. You're not going to not go to your destiny because your destiny is your destiny. But it will slow you down if you choose to embrace being a mother because this energy they're gonna need your creative life force. Yeah. And you need to know that going in. And what Gloria said, which I think is totally true, the part of the memo we didn't get as women was you have to make choices. And the choices you make determine how you have to constellate your life because we didn't have a different choice. And so then we were talking now about all this, like, the mommy thing and how you have to get off the track and like all that stuff that's true in this system. But we could design a different system that actually acknowledges, the raising of our children, which, by the way, isn't that one of the most important things that we do as a society? Shouldn't the society be built like around that?
Right. But as a working parent, you make a lot of sacrifices as a working parent. You're either sacrificing your job or you're sacrificing your family. You really can't be in both places at the same time until we figure that out, which I'll be the first one to sign up for. But I have always wanted to learn how to bilocate because I always want to be in two different places at the same time because things are very, and it is a give or take with being a working mom. But in the end, I've worked my whole life and raised our daughters 18 today, which is fairly exciting. And I think it's been great for her to see me going through what I've gone through as an entrepreneur. I mean, it's definitely, as you know, it's an up and down type of road. And she sees the success and she sees the failures. And she sees it all right here in our own house because this is where I work from. And in the the other day she said to my husband and I, does every conversation have to be about work? And because my husband and I work together. So I looked over there and I'm like, good point. Sorry. And you've learned a lot from this, but how do you feel? And she got the opportunity to say how she felt that she wanted to be add more value to the conversation and feel like she was more a part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And we have conversations like that in our family. So it gave us an opportunity to say, yes. And by her not adding value to the conversation, she was feeling like she wasn't good enough. Wow, like cracked open a lot of, I see you. And the fact that we can even talk like that as a family means we didn't just start when she was 18. I mean, we started this a long time ago, but she got a chance to express that. And that was great. Really, really great. So I've learned a lot being a working mom and a stay-at-home mom and an entrepreneur, and to allow your child to be a part of the conversation and you don't judge it. doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. They're a part of it, and you don't correct them. And if they have an idea, you let them express it. And it doesn't need to be this was that, or that's a great idea, but just like, okay, well then what? And then what would you do after that? And then this, and it's great.
Well, and I think that points to, Lisa, we've been talking about, like, how do you reimagine, right? So if we are in the process of healing and stabilizing and reimagining what's possible, and the human mind can only create what it's seen before and what it's seen other people do. So there's a higher level of consciousness, and I think the human heart too. And it's not just going to be the people who are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. It's going to come to the ones that are 10 and 20 and 30. Like, we're like going to do this together. And so by you opening up that conversation with your daughter and not marginalizing her because she's 18, right? And what does she really have to say, and really listening and opening that up, that is the process of opening up the way to reimagining. It's like we don't have to go back. Okay, now I have another project. I have to go reimagine the world. It's like
yes,
that would be overwhelming. What we just need to do is look within our own selves, and then our family ecosystem, and then our own businesses. So one of the things that I'm inviting people to ask this question right now, which is, what is no longer sustainable for you? Like, what is no longer sustainable for you? And to look at your work and how you've set up the work situation and what that is like, or you've been indoctrinated into it. What's no longer sustainable in my relationships? And then what's no longer sustainable in how I've designed my life? And look at those places, because those are going to point you to the places that are like, oh, this wants a shift, this wants to change. And we kind of break down. We're like, I don't even know how to do that. I don't even know how to do that. And you don't have to know the how. You just have to be able to be like, this is actually, and that's why I have a line under over it on the cover, because it's the no more point. It's like no more, no, like, and your daughter had a no more moment.
Right.
She's like, no more just talking about work all the time, which I live with my partner. I can definitely go there too. So
yes.
I know.
Especially during this time of massive pivoting. Yeah. Since the last 8 months has just been really consumed by work.
But she has that, well, and of course, right, because you do work in the world of transformation and supporting people and all of that. So there's like this over responsibility thing that many of us have felt, and we're tired. People are emotionally and energetically tired, And
then you throw in the college application process in the meantime, and I want to just, I start my second job at 8:00 at night editing essays. Oh my God. I just keep saying to myself, this is temporary, this is temporary, this is temporary. And I'm going to miss it when she's not in the house anymore. So of course I'll edit that essay. Of course I'll look at this with you. And I just know that this is also golden time, but it's interesting.
And it's also that place where we can actually say, it's no longer sustainable. So one of the things that you're doing in the downshifting part, I call it, it's like you start the second day of work at 8:00, which, for those of us who have tons of energy, I used to do that all the time too. I occasionally do that now, very rare, but it can become a habit. And that's where you have to watch yourself, because that's what then actually gets you into burnout. And it's one of the ways that we self-sabotage ourselves. And so there's that moment of like, okay, it's just no more. Like, I can't keep working 2 days of work in one day. Or for me, like in my business before, 2 years before the pandemic, I had a no more moment of like, no more. Like my company was making more and more money, but there was not more and more money coming to me, which happens a lot to entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I was like, this is a beast, and this beast has to keep being fed. I don't want to, no more. I'm not feeding the beast. Like, we have to redesign this, because this is ridiculous, because it was all reliant on me. And so 2 years before the pandemic, I pared down my business, and I released staff, and I moved things around. I also was writing the book. And so I was more nimble, during this time, which helped a lot. I didn't have all that overhead. And so I think that's the part of like those no mores for us, to be able to look around and be like, okay, and just say that, like, it's not sustainable anymore. And then it needs to shift. I don't know how, I don't know when. And that opens up, I think, like the universe to say, oh, she's serious, let's send down some help. And then the reimagining happens in that.
So your beginning point is when you say no more.
Yes. It's drawing the line in the sand and say, this is no longer sustainable for me. And then that opens up the possibility to start to reimagine what that looks like.
I love how you keep saying that you don't know what it's going to look like, but you know what it's not going to look like. Mm-hmm. And we can also say that with all of the habits that we've picked up, maybe from our mothers and our mothers' mothers, of that overgiving, taking care of everything themselves, having to do it themselves type of thing, that is unconscious at this point. And if you recognize the drain that's putting on you, your first step is to just stop.
Yeah, so you do what I call, I've quit my job several times. And sometimes you have to give yourself permission to just quit, like for a day or a half day. Like when it gets to that point, like I have permission. Like I quit for a day, I'll see you all tomorrow. But then we do that and then we go right back in. And so what I'm inviting us to do is actually quit, take the break that you need, and then actually draw the line. No more. This actually has to change. And then from that place, in my experience, and I've gotten to that no more point multiple times. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll be done, but I'm not done yet. So it's not about never getting overwhelmed or getting to that place of like, this is just draining me too much. No matter how much I love what I do, no matter how much I love the people that I care for, I cannot do this anymore. And it's not your fault. It doesn't make you weak. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just, you're not Atlas. You're not a superwoman. We're not Wonder Woman. We are not. We are human women. And I know, but you know, it's like, really, you want to walk around shooting bullets out here? It's like, I don't know.
I'd love to. I mean, not that, but I'd love to be like that fly. That'd be cool. But
we have other superpowers. I know you have many superpowers, Lisa. I'm sure of it. And then the other part I would just say is about the other question is, what is sustaining you? That what really is sustaining and supporting you, because I know for a lot of people, women especially, have been in this club. I don't feel supported. I don't have the support I need. I have to do it because if I don't do it, no one else will do it.
Going to do it. Yes.
And it recapitulates itself. And so you'll never feel supported from what comes on the outside until you take a stand to feel supported on the inside and start to look at the ways that you fill the space, take it all on, push support away, and you get that achieving into a balance with that receiving. And so one way you do that is start to look around. The non-sustaining part is number one, but then number two, what is supporting me? What is sustaining me? Gratitude, of course, for that, but more of it, like what is it that allows you? A lot of times women can receive in one area of their life, but they struggle in another area. So like in the relationship, they might be really able to receive love and care and support and nurturing, but when it comes to their business, they're boss lady. And so they can't receive that support unless they pay for it, and then they're paying for it, but they're paying so much for it, then they're not receiving what, that whole thing that can happen.
There's more than one woman in this position?
Oh yes, there's a whole bunch of us.
Not just me? Really?
Now, welcome to the club. There's thousands of us. There's so many of us, and because we're so awesome and strong, we've been able to keep it up. And now is the time to be like, actually, not anymore, because our daughters are getting it. That's the thing. And I know, Lisa, you have a deep, deep passion for young women, as do I. And when I hear the stories of 8-year-olds who are coming home and asking their mothers to take anti-anxiety medication because they're so stressed out. And I didn't even know what anxiety was when I was 8. And you put on top of that social media and technology and the pace of our lives. That's not okay with me. And this is the part of that fierce feminine, like, not on my watch. Not on my watch are we going to create a world in which little girls and young women at the age of 8 think it's okay that they need to have anti-anxiety medicine. Like, not on my watch.
That good for you, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. And you spoke to a group of young girls that I'm involved with as well, and every year you'll be asked to speak with that group, because it was so great that you just taught them how to, just the simplest thing of listening to their intuition. Wow. And it opened up a whole new flood of emotions and talking, and it was amazing. And so there's a great quiz that you have, and it's called amiovergiving.com. And you can start to become aware of, that's the name of the show, aware of the specific ways that you overgive. And Christine has identified 13 of them over a decade of research. But some of them are like over caretaking, a lot of us are in that position, overextending yourself, over focusing on the future. That's me and a lot of us, because we're so uncertain about our future at this point. Over promising, over protecting. These are just a few. And if any one of those made sense to you, there's a lot of great solutions in the book, because can we find out in that overgiving quiz what kind of overgiver we are? So like,
yes,
overgiving
there's
personality.
13 different overgiving imprints. Most of us have most of them, but one of the things I do every year is I choose one and I focus on that one all year long, and I start to see, how is it showing up in work? How is it showing up in my finances? How's it showing up in my relationships? And so that awareness, like I love, that it's about awareness. And then you're like, wow, I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that. And look, there it is over there again. And then here's where the rubber meets the road. This is where the power empowerment comes in. You have to start making different choices. And those choices will trigger you. They will bring up fear. They will bring out, my inner mean girl likes to say, you're falling behind. You're falling behind. You have to keep doing more. And I actually chose overextending to transmute over the course of this year when the book was coming out, which, as an author, really easy. Got to hire the publicist, get the website. And I'm like,
zillion interviews. Yes.
Zillion interviews. And I said, I will not go into debt, life force debt, or financial debt or anything. I will not overextend myself. And I didn't. The way that support came around me and the women that came around and the way the financial exchange worked and the energetic exchange, it was like miracles, happening, these beautiful miracles. But it brought me to that place of like breaking through these imprints of how things have to be. And
good for you. I mean, you write a book called Overwhelmed and Over It. You can very well go through the entire book launch completely overwhelmed. that would defeat the purpose of the book.
It would. I think I realized that when I wrote the book. They always say, be aware of what you write about, because you will have to live it. And so I'm happy to live this. This is sustainable success. And I really feel like, for me, one of the promises every year on Self-Love Day, which is February 13th, I make a promise to keep for myself. And this year was, I promise to savor what I create. I promise to savor what I create. And I love that word savor, right? Because it's just like, yum, yum, yum. And I, because I have to watch myself, I'll just keep creating. And then I'll just keep, move so fast through it. And so whether it was like a retreat or like the book, I'm savoring this interview with you. Like, that's a way we start to feel nourished and nurtured, by actually creating the space to savor it in the moment as we're going through it.
Well, it is really cool, though, to have these conversations and to enlighten people about all of these different ideas and concepts. I mean, it really is it's really cool what you're doing, and you get to have great conversations all day. And I love the book, and you're calling out women in ways that we just don't know that we're doing, but it's not sustainable. So thank you for this. I mean, this has been huge. And I know that you're getting a lot of great, accolades from the book, and you're helping a lot of women. So please keep it up. Are there any other ways that people can be involved with you other than the book?
Just come over. Well, Feminine Power Time is a great way to stay connected on my podcast, and come over to the book page, Overwhelmed and Over It, and that connects you to my website. So there's lots of good stuff going on. This is my work in the world, and I'm super, I feel like I was born for these times. I don't know. Do you feel that way, Lisa? Like, I feel like I was born. I'm like, I know what to do. Like, I don't have all the answers, because anyone who tells you all the answers, you should never listen to them.
Right.
I have processes and practices and, perspectives and things. And then we can we implement it and we work it. And then together we create a world that is really based in wholeness and wellness for realsio. And it's going to take a while, it's going to take some time, but
it's definitely not an overnight process. I do feel like everything that I've ever learned or interviewed someone about over the past 20 years is now being used right now, is utilized right now. So yes, and we have been talking about chaotic times for a long time. This isn't new. So it's how we identify with it and how we overcome it and rise into a new way, especially as humanity. But we have to start with ourselves first. So thank you for being one of the beacons of light in the world. It's really wonderful to meet you face to face finally. We've done interviews over the radio before, but this is great.
This is fun. Yeah, it's super great. And just sending lots of blessings out to everybody. Just remember, not your fault. Breathe, stay connected, and we'll get through this and rise all together. I really do believe that's possible.
Thank you. I do too. All right. Overwhelmed and Over It is the name of Christine Arylo's book. And thank you again for all of you listening. As you can also listen to our podcast, which is The Aware Show, and you can listen to that wherever you hear podcasts. And until next time, I invite you to stay aware.